It's the 13th of December 2024. You're welcome back. It's a good morning here in rural Ireland on the step one side, and you can see the turbines in the Rara wind farm there are doing nothing. Now, if you're idiot enough to think that those are producing electricity at that speed, then you are truly an idiot. I know none of my viewers are that ignorant. Now, the thing is, they're producing nothing. And you can check EirGrid Smart Dashboard for 10:30 a.m. today, the 13th of December, and you'll find that they're producing nothing. They're producing nothing whatsoever. And so wind energy at the moment is futile. So what I want to tell you then is what happens. We have 4,000 megawatts of wind energy at the moment, and they're producing nothing. So what the government wants to do is that if the wind picked up a little, it's very still here, completely still, but if the wind picked up just a tiny bit, some of them maybe up to maybe 5 miles an hour, you might get a little output. So the government's ultimate policy is to put in something like 50 million of these onshore and offshore, so many of these that they'd have to pick up a wee bit somewhere. There'd have to be a wee bit of wind somewhere. The problem with that 50 million wind turbines is that when the wind would pick up strong, you couldn't use the energy. Remember, 36% of the electricity in the grid has to be from reliable, firm fossil fuel sources, such as coal, oil, gas or nuclear. 36%, otherwise the whole thing would collapse. The frequency of 50 hertz would collapse. And if you go on EirGrid Smart Dashboard, you'll see the frequency at 50 hertz, and it can only go about 40.4 of a hertz each side of that. Otherwise, the whole capacitors would fail, all the trips would fail, and you'd have blackouts all over the place. So it's very strict regulation. Now, so this is what I'm trying to tell you. There's nothing in any of the government plan to show what is the optimum amount of wind in the system. So what they have instead said is as much as you possibly can get built with all the local objections and everything else. And when the onshore is used up, push it off out to offshore. Now, one of the points that one of my engineering friends continually criticizes me for is not to explain how these are too close together. The distance between the number 1 turbine and number 5 turbine is 871 meters, whereas the distance between 1 and 2 should be 870 meters. You know what I mean? So these are all crammed in. There's 5 turbines crammed into the space which should be for 2. The number 1 is in the townland of Rara, very close to the Monaghan border of Crumlin, Maracloon. And if you were to have them the right distance, the number 5 would be at the St. Joseph's National School in Kingscourt, which is about 2.5 miles away, or about 3 kilometres, do you understand? So what happens is they're too close together and you're not getting optimum output. Now, to explain that to you, if you had a field, 1 acre field, reasonably good field, and you're growing potatoes in it, and it grows, let's say, 19 tons of good potatoes, sellable potatoes, potable potatoes every year, you can't double the output of that field by doubling the amount of seed potatoes you produce. Some people cannot understand this. Some people are so thick that a cow would have more intelligence than them. That's the unfortunate fact. You cannot increase the output from a field of potatoes by continually doubling the amount of seed you put in. They're too close together. The seed won't grow. They won't have space. You won't be able to get through them with the tractor, and there's all kinds of reasons. There's the optimum output of the field, roughly about 19 imperial tons, or a little more in metric tons per acre, per statute acre, and that's it. Now, you cannot increase the amount of wind energy harvested from a plot of land by putting more turbines into it. It's the area swept that produces the output, not the number of turbines. And in recent years, you see they make them bigger all the time. They keep making them bigger. And the reason they make them bigger is the companies, the pension funds and the public pensions and all of these investment funds, they're losing money on these ones. So the only thing they can give them is bigger turbines. It doesn't make any difference. If you double the size of the turbines, you should at least double the area of land they're on. So if there's 5 small ones and you want to double the size, you'd need at least twice the area of land and more to host them. Do you understand that? Neither the wind energy bothers about it, they don't care, the government doesn't want to know, or anything else. Now, do you understand that? You can't increase the output of wind energy by simply increasing the amount of turbines you put in. And in any event, you're limited in that you can only have 64% wind at any event. So this morning now there's very little, but they'd be looking ahead. What about tomorrow if there's a little bit of a breeze? So the idea is to put up so many thousands and thousands of wind turbines that you'd have a bit. The problem then is when the wind picks up, you can't use that electricity. So if you have all those massive amounts of wind energy, the wind power's coming in, the wind energy's coming in, but you're limited in that only 64% of it can be allowed in because it'll collapse the grid if it's any more. And so what do? You pay them to turn off. It's there online. I don't keep up to date with the amount that they're paying them, but Irish wind turbines are getting money to turn off, not to produce anything when there's windy conditions. And that lie is being told by RTE. Our national broadcaster lies about it, and so does the Irish Times and the Irish Independent, direct and open lies. Of course, none of it is assessed under the SCA directive because they couldn't do it, and that would result in them being told by engineers the whole thing is a big Ponzi scheme. Okay, the plans are to build it offshore. A lot of the companies are afraid to touch it because of the fact that they're not making any money, and also the fact that they're illegal and can be pulled down. And I'm only waiting my time, but I have a lot of irons in the fire. I'm only off the phone from somebody there trying to challenge a wind farm, and I can't be everywhere. But eventually, hopefully, I'll pull these down, if nothing only to prove the point. Now, is there anything about that people need to explain? Like that subject, and like the EU directives relating to it, you could repeat it 190 billion times to people, and they cannot get it through their head. Isn't that unbelievable? The level of ignorance and the inability to absorb anything complex by the Irish people, and indeed it's not much better elsewhere. The Americans seem to be a bit more up to date, a bit better for it, is breathtaking. It's so breathtaking that I am beginning to think we may as well throw our hat at it. It'll eventually all come clashing down around our heads. They're allowing teachers now teach in national school and in secondary school, I believe, with just arts degrees in English and history. Complete and utter airheads. And you saw Kamala Harris, the president candidate in America, a complete and utter airhead. There are teachers in national schools in Ireland teaching children how a cow produces milk and about how you milk the cow. And then teaching them that before you milk the cow, the farmer has to wash their teeth with a toothbrush, Oral-B and Colgate toothpaste, and he has to wash the cow's teeth. And the children are writing that down on their copybooks, thinking that that's a fact. So we are truly living in one of the biggest idiocracies ever was invented. And in the last general election, the people of Ireland decided to vote. And some of them who would be engineers, some of them would be fitters, they wouldn't be that stupid, they could fix an engine and things, still went in and voted for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I know one man who was a good fitter in the works, very good fitter, very good at designing things, and I used to admire his work, but he's a Fianna Fáil, puts up the posters and takes them down, and committed, dyed in the wool Fianna Fáil, and the people he's supporting wouldn't have a clue. And they'll be producing teachers that believe that cow's teeth have to be washed by the farmer before she's milked. What do you do in this situation? That's the story. These things are a Ponzi scheme. There's 61,000 megawatts of these in Germany. 61,000 megawatts in Germany, and look at what's happening there. Their whole economy is gone belly up. It's just the woke green nanny state, wishful thinking politics of the world. And these same people would pull your son or your daughter and put them into an army to fight Putin. That's what they would do. So I hope by now you understand that you can incorporate wind energy on the grid in small amounts. Whether it does anything or not, we don't know. But Kees Lapierre, a Dutch engineer, postulated that it's 4% of its nameplate capacity. But RTE will tell you that if that thing there is going flying around and that it's 5 megawatt, it's 10 megawatts, that's 10 megawatts not produced anywhere else. I've heard people assert that when you put in 10 megawatts of wind power, that's 10 megawatts saved somewhere else. That's a complete and utter lie. All that's happening is they pull back the load of the fossil fuel plant and leave it spinning just so it's ready to pick up again. And I've explained all that in the previous video, how you cannot make electricity for industry and for homes out of the weather. It's impossible. If that were possible, it would have happened in 1920. They abandoned that whole plan about then, and everyone realized this didn't work. What happened in the meantime is the standard of education is gone down. And when I'm advising people to find wind farms, I look at the environmental impact assessment and I see who signed it. And if it's not signed by a qualified engineer, we challenge it on that grounds under the 2014 directive. Folks, that's, I think, everything. I think you can understand it now. Not alone is what I said true, but the wind can blow when it likes, and if you're not fit to take it and you don't have the demand, what do you do? Now, to get over this, they are building data centres all over the place to try and up the demand, because if you have we'll say 6,000 of a demand and 36% of that has to be fossil fuel, if you can raise the demand up to 10,000, you can then get more wind energy in, but you have to burn more fossil fuel to make the 36%. Do you understand that? So you have to do that. So that's what the data centers are for. The data centers are for to use up the power and increase the emissions. And as they increase the emissions, they attack the farmer and put him out of business and take his cattle off him. And they do that because the farmer will vote then for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Sinn Féin for some unknown reason. Explain that to me. We are heading into a future where total and utter ignorance, where education, science, mathematics is scoffed at, and for children that express an aptitude for it will be the laughingstock of their class and of their teacher. Imagine if you turned around to your teacher in school and said, "Mammy, I don't think you have to wash the cow's teeth at all. We have cows at home and Daddy never washes their teeth." She'll turn around and say, "Your daddy is abusing the animal. He's not giving the cows the proper hygiene." That's the world we are building, and that's what we have. I can only report on it to you here. Comment underneath. We'll see you back for something else. Good luck.